It's time for Windows Weekly, episode 146. Coming up, Paul's getting tired of the Google, the drama at Infinity Ward, and Apple versus the world. Windows Weekly is next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Windows Weekly is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com. This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott, episode 146 for March 5th, 2010. Google fatigue. Windows Weekly is brought to you by Astaro Corporation, makers of the Astaro Security Gateway. To try the Astaro Security Gateway free in your business, call 877-4-ASTARO. And by Go to Assist Express, the easy way to provide instant tech support to your customers remotely. Support smarter with Go to Assist Express. For a free 30-day trial, go to gotoassist.com/Windows. And by Audible.com. To download a free audiobook of your choice, go to audible.com/Windows. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show that covers all things Windified, all the Microsoft stuff. Joining us right now, the star of the show, the man of the hour, the editor-in-chief of the Supersite for Windows at WinSupersite.com, the news editor for Windows IT Pro, and the author of Windows 7 Secrets. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Paul Thurrott.
And the crowd goes wild.
Hey,
yeah.
Paulie, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well. I had a speech last night. You know what Ignite is? It's Ignite Week.
No.
Ignite is something that O'Reilly started up in Seattle. A couple of O'Reilly employees, and I think that it really is kind of a grassroots TED in a way. Instead of TED, you only have 18 minutes, and an Ignite speech is 5 minutes long.
So it's like the Twitter version of TED.
It is. It's for the and probably in 5 years we'll have 30-second speeches.
And you actually speak as if you were texting
140 characters.
with very strange abbreviations.
But this is you get 20 slides. They're auto-advancing every 15 seconds. So you have
20 slides. You got to move right along.
And you got to just boom, 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 boom. And it was really fun writing a speech that could be done in 5 minutes with 20 slides. And you write basically 2 sentences a slide. It was really fun. I had a good time doing it. IgniteShow.com, and they put all of the videos up there. There's 60 Ignites this week all over the world in all 7 continents.
Right.
Yeah. It's really cool. So, Paul, how the heck are you? What are you up to these days? Anything exciting?
God, I've got so much going on. I've been working on this Dell stuff. I'm doing some webinars for them, but I need to. I got a big trip coming up, and I'll be speaking as well in Las Vegas in about 2 weeks, I guess.
What event are you going to be talking at?
I don't even.
You don't know the name?
It's a Windows 7 deployment show that the magazine's putting on.
Cool.
Well, sort of. I'm sort of like the court jester at this show because my talk is on Windows 7 annoyances, and it's not really related to the show per se.
Well, that's a challenge. That's a short speech, right? Because there's so few.
Yeah, right. I actually am going to answer every problem that exists currently with Windows 7 during this talk. So it will be a lot like yours.
5 minutes,
20 seconds a
20
slide.
slides.
Yeah.
Are there Windows? It's funny because that was one of the most popular sites of all time, Windows 95 annoyances. It was a great site. And it was very helpful to users. It told you how to work around all those problems. And it's faded away. And I don't know if it's because there are fewer annoyances.
Yeah.
I think that you could safely say...
No, I don't think that's why. I think it's like anything like that. They meant well. Then it kind of went up. I actually looked up, they still make these books, right? There are still annoyances books. But the one for Windows 7 isn't even out yet. So
I think that if you look at what the Windows 95 annoyances were, they really were the rough edges that have been smoothed over. I mean, I hate to say this. This pains me to say.
Go ahead.
But
I want to hear it.
I think Windows 7 is pretty unannoying.
Perfect. Maybe just to... I don't know if you want to just to sort of Twitterize the statement.
Windows 7, perfection embodied.
It's
operating
close.
system. Nothing's perfect, obviously.
No, it's perfect.
But it's
no.
but
I mean,
it's a
when you
lot
think
better.
of annoyances, honestly, a lot of it has to do with people who were using a previous version of Windows and they move forward. You know, a lot of people skip Vista, for example, and you know, there are things that are different, and some of those things can be annoying if you're not used to them. You know, like the stuff with the taskbar can be considered an annoyance if that's not how you want it to work. So, I guess looked at liberally.
You were annoyed by it initially, but you've come around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I get like anyone else, I guess you get used to things, you know.
But the annoyances in Windows 95 were so damn annoying. They're really this page was might have been one of the most popular web pages of the time.
Windows 95 was a big change from the past, and just like the new taskbar in Windows 7, anytime you do something different, there are going to be rough edges and things that you'll kind of get right over time. You know.
Well, now the new annoyances are actually just Microsoft itself. The Microsoft marketing campaigns, Microsoft naming conventions. I mean, there are some annoyances there. I'm not gonna say.
Oh, that. I'll have plenty to be annoyed about in the decades ahead. Fair not. Actually, the most annoying thing about Windows is the people that use Windows, right?
Well, that's true of the Mac too. It's the people who are
no, and I don't mean from a
aficionados.
Well, no, but it's like the overthinking thing that I talked about. You know. When I get email about things like managing the page file size in Windows 7, which I get.
Just stop.
Or, stuff like that. It's like, guys, seriously. You know,
I'm in a long thread right now with a guy who insists that he says, I use CCleaner, the registry cleaner, but I have kind of a blanket for the radio show particularly. I mean, if you're a geek, you do whatever you want. But if you're a novice newbie, I say don't use a registry cleaner because the benefits are minimal if to none, and the possible risks are very high because you can remove keys and make things not work. And now CCleaner is good; it doesn't do that. But we did benchmarks. I've done many benchmarks trying to prove that a registry cleaner in any way enhances performance, and I cannot find any objective measure that says it enhances performance.
Yeah. No, I don't want to. I don't mean to make fun of this person, but
this guy wants to use registry cleaners, and he says, "Why don't you recommend it?"
Yeah, no, I mean, I get emails about this too, right? And my advice about registry cleaners is even less than what you have to offer because I don't ever use them. I don't have anything to say about them, you know. But I did get a very detailed set of instructions from this guy about, you know, here's how I always set up my system. And it really involved an incredible series of steps. You know,
most voodoo.
Install
most
this,
of it's voodoo.
run CC Cleaner.
Yeah.
Install this. Now run CC Cleaner. Install this. Run CC. Seriously? I mean, like, you know, can we just... the computer isn't the end game, right? It's a tool, right? We use it to get other things done, don't we?
That's what you mean by people who are annoying. It's the people who are so into it that they've got this. It's ritualized.
There's got to be some comedy around this in my talk. I'm trying to figure out how to do this without insulting people, but you know, the very fact that anyone would want to go to the show is annoying. You know, and
I don't think you should say that.
And I need to somehow do this without being a jerk. Like if you're in here, you are annoying. Yeah,
that's good. That's funny. Yeah. You can make that comedy. No, you can make comedy out of that, but it's a fine line.
You have to do it right. Yeah.
Yeah. You could also get egged out of existence. So, and remember, you know, you'd have to get on a plane to get home. You can't just drive home.
That's for sure.
Yeah, they've got you there.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a lot to talk about, including the sales figures are out for Windows 7. But before we do that, I would like to mention our friends at Citrix who, well, you know, you want somebody like Citrix to be obsessive about getting the maximum performance out of Windows because, frankly, when you buy their products, you are relying on its stability, its security, its performance. Citrix has been doing it longer than anybody. Ed Yakabuchi, who wrote the original Citrix stuff, was a IBM OS2 programmer who came to Redmond to work on NT and knew more about the NT kernel than anybody at Microsoft. That's why Microsoft licensed Citrix for its remote access. It's why Citrix is still the best enterprise-based remote access. And, of course, it's the basis for all of these great consumer products like GoToMyPC, GoToMeeting, and GoToAssist. Now, if you're in the IT or support profession, same for you. Attention to detail is very important. GoToAssist makes it possible for you to do the best job for your clients, to be a support hero. If you're trying to fix tech support problems in person, or even worse, blindly over the phone, this is a great online support service that you can use to view and control your customers' computers. With their permission, of course. It's very easy for them. They don't have to have anything installed ahead of time. You just send them a link. I do it. I was on Skype with my mom. I I said, Mom, I'm going to send you a link. Open the chat window, pasted a link. She clicked it. Go to Assist Installed, and I was able to fix her computer within seconds. It allows you to do up to 8 sessions. With your client's permission, they can be unattended, so you can set it up for the systems throughout your business or your enterprise and make it very easy for you to maintain and update. But because you can have 8 sessions at once, too, you can run a scan, or if you want to use CCleaner, you can run CCleaner and have it scanning and then move to the next one, the next one, the next one. It gives you an assay of all the software that's running, what the operating system is, what the security software is. I can go on and on, but I think the best way to try it is to try it. Go to gotoassist.com, free. Go to assist.com, click /Windows, install the software. You have 30 days to try it. That means you can use it on any computer, anywhere. You just say, I want to fix your computer, Mom, or whatever. They have day passes for the casual IT person, but it really is for the pro. Go to assist.com /Windows. Try it free today. I know you're going to find it of great use. We thank Citrix for their support of our entire network. So Windows 7. Now, we've talked about sales figures before. There's just kind of this default sell-through that for all versions of Windows, right? I mean, it's just automatic.
Sure. I mean, and I don't remember which site this was. It might have been the Register, one of those sites. They were talking about Windows Vista at the time, and I think they were comparing it to some of the initial Windows 7 sales figures, and they said, Vista sold this well, too. And for some reason, we consider Vista to be this big disaster. But, of course, this thing is... there are hundreds of millions of copies, several hundred million copies out there, on people's computers. But, I think the difference with 7 compared to Vista is that with Vista, there was a mix of XP and Vista being sold, right? People were, in fact, going back to Windows XP, and they're actually not seeing that anymore. Now, granted, Microsoft's making it harder, as they will. But I think the thing that's interesting about this is, we talked about this probably late last year about how quiet Microsoft had been, about Windows 7 sales. I thought that was kind of strange. And then when they released their quarterly results, I think they announced at the time they had sold 60 million copies through the end of last year. Yesterday, they revealed via a talk of some kind in a presentation that they had sold another 30 million copies for a total of 90 million. And now we hear that they expect to sell over 300 million copies this year.
Whoa. That's amazing. 300 million of anything is amazing.
Yeah, 300 million that's a big number. And
that's pretty much every new computer sold.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So that's what I mean by it. As we've said before, it's just kind of automatic. What was the total Vista sell-through? We don't know. They've never. It's got it, but it's more than 300 million. It's every.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it's got to be in the upper.
It's got to be in the billions.
Yeah, it's got to be way up there. Yeah. But one thing I guess I can't really share where I got this from. Unfortunately, it's sort of a secret source of mine. But one thing I think that's kind of interesting, and I hope Microsoft talks about this in the future, is how Windows 7 is selling. How what version people are buying and so forth. And I think I only have data for the United States. But for example, one big thing that's changed between Windows Vista and Windows 7 is that with Windows 7, predominantly, by a very, very wide margin, people are buying 64-bit versions.
Yeah, now I don't know if that's so good. I get calls all the time.
Well, I think it's good going forward, right? I think this is an important break that we made. Microsoft originally intended for Windows Vista to be that line, and there was talk at the time that the next version of Windows, which became Windows 7, there wouldn't be a 32-bit version. And of course, they still did do that, although its server version, the server version of Windows 7, there is no 32-bit version, so they're already doing it on the server side.
The problem is, of course, drivers and third parties who are not making their software or hardware work with 64-bit.
Yes, but again, I think that's why this is an important
Microsoft's saying, well, we're going to break it. We're going to mess it up. You better do it.
So this is a chance to get rid of that legacy stuff that's really just deadwood anyway. The other,
tell that to the guy who's got to use it.
No, I understand. But
that's the problem, is that we are the victims of this.
No, I wouldn't say victim, because you have a choice, right? And if you do buy a copy of Windows 7 at retail, you do get both versions. Right. So if 64-bit doesn't work out for you, installing 32-bit on the same system is not a huge deal. The sheer weight of the 64-bit sales versus 32-bit is really interesting. It's to the tune of it's averaging somewhere around the 70% range of all Windows units are 64-bit versions of Windows 7, compared to about 8 to 10% for 32-bit versions of Windows 7, compared to somewhere in the 5 to 10% range for Windows 7 Starter, which is considered a separate thing. And then also Windows XP, really tiny percentage, less than 5%. And this is something that didn't happen with the previous version of Windows as well. Windows XP is still kind of in there, but it's really, really small, and is, in fact, even smaller than the Starter edition for the new version of the OS. So it's a big change.
Right. And what is the advantage, again, of 64-bit?
It's more bits, Leo.
Yeah, well, I know that. It's twice as good.
It's at least twice as good. I'm not a math guy. No,
you get more RAM.
You get access to more RAM, which can be important. And
it's going to be important going forward.
Absolutely. The PCs with 8, 16 or more gigs of RAM is crazy. There are some minor security advantages. There are some security features that are exposed in 64-bit systems that aren't in 32-bit.
But that's not inherently 64. That's just because Microsoft didn't do the kernel protection in 32.
Yep.
But they really, I can't think of.
Okay, they did. It's just it's implemented differently and so forth.
It's not as draconian. Yeah. It seems to me that I've yet to be demonstrated to me that a 64-bit operating system is inherently better, except for that you address more RAM, and we will be needing that. So we've got to move there. But people think that it's going to be twice as good in some magic way, and in fact, that it's not necessarily even
right.
faster.
And I think the reason is when we went from 16 to 32-bit computing, it was a big jump, because in the 16-bit and 8-bit world previous, there was a lot of fragmentation issues around how RAM was accessed and so forth. It was really kind of screwed up. And one of the advantages for 32-bit computing, at least with the platforms that were mainstream computing platforms, was a flat memory model. Very simple. And we already have that. So when you move from 32-bit to 64-bit, it's just more, basically, from a RAM standpoint.
It's more. It's better. It's more.
Yeah.
And that's
it's just the way it is. I mean, and again, this is the baseline going forward. So it's just and I would expect and hope that the next version of Windows would just be 64-bit, But yeah, I mean, anytime you make a break like this, it's hard. One of the questions that's come up a lot lately is around Windows Home Server, for example. Microsoft specified that the hardware had to be 64-bit, or should be 64-bit, because they were already saying when the first version came out that future versions of this will be 64-bit only. Current version of Windows Home Server is 32-bit.
Right.
So now we've gotten some information about Vail, which is the next version. People are saying, hey, if I buy an HP today or whatever Windows Home Server, will I be able to upgrade that thing to to the new version? Well, there is no migration path, or there's no way to do an upgrade from a 32-bit version of Windows to a 64-bit. That's true on server as well. Plus, with Home Server, you kind of look at it and think, well, this thing is meant to work like an appliance. It's a tool. It's like a toaster. It sits there in a corner. It does its job. I mean, you don't really look at your DVD player and think, I wonder if I can upgrade that to the new version of the software.
Right.
It kind of does its thing. So Microsoft has never said, but I would imagine at the very most there's going to be some sort of data migration strategy. But it's kind of tough when if you have a single computer and all of your data is there. How do you move that to a new operating system without screwing everything up? It's going to be a touchy situation. I'm going to guess and say they probably won't be doing it. So, going 64-bit now on the desktop, I'm not saying it will guarantee you an easier upgrade path, but it's something maybe to consider, right?
I'm not saying to people, whatever you do, don't get 64-bit.
Sure.
In fact, I'm saying if you're getting a new computer and you don't have legacy hardware or software, absolutely get 64-bit. But if you should find out first if there's stuff, because it's a surprising amount of stuff doesn't work.
It can bite you, yeah. And it bit me. Without really even thinking about it, I had installed a 64-bit version of Office 2010 Beta, for example. The 64-bit version is not compatible with Outlook plugins that you may want to use.
Right. It's not compatible with Flash.
iPod and iPhone and that kind of syncing if you want to do that kind of thing. So,
well, I think there's an iTunes 64-bit.
Right, but I'm saying, in the beta, in other words, anytime you do something that's like the next version,
Right.
you run into this issue where it's just not supported and it may not work. The software would probably work fine, but it just doesn't recognize it.
Right.
So, yeah, that's the type of stuff we're going to run into. There's always going to be a little bit of that, but I think it's a necessary little bit of pain to go through because on the other end, we're going to be in better shape.
Yeah. Well, we have to, again, because we want we're going to be using more RAM. Everything's going to want more RAM. It's just the way it is.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's see here. Microsoft, I don't know why this is controversial, wants to make PCs safer.
You should see, maybe this is only controversial in my email. The email I get from people really cracks me up. There was an RSA conference occurring this week in San Francisco, which is a security conference. Microsoft appears every year. They do a keynote address. Scott Charney is the corporate vice president who talks to this stuff. He's been talking about this, for a couple of years now. But, he, maybe unfortunately, but he made some interesting comparisons to security on the internet and comparing it to, say, like a national healthcare system. And, of course, these are the types of things that freak people out from a language perspective. But
yeah, that might have been a mistake to say that.
Plus, he also
are there going to be death panels? Is the question?
yeah, exactly right. So that was probably Google's contribution to the discussion. But he also brought up the specter of maybe taxes should pay for the protection mechanism that he sees
that might
needing.
Not.
And people hear that and they say, I don't know about taxes, But think about this for a second. There is a technology in corporations. It's not in wide-scale use yet, but it's very hard to implement, but it's excellent when it works, which is called Network Access Protection, or NAC. Mm-hmm. And what it does is it basically, and there's my phone, because, that's what I do here. I don't remember to
It's
get
that Microsoft executive calling you.
No, actually, it's my father. So,
hey, Dad.
I just fixed my mother's computer, so I'm sure.
Oh, you see? I hope you just go to assist.
No, actually, he dropped it off in a paper bag with.
This is why you use
printed
go to
and
assist.
highlighted in 72-point type.
If you don't use go to assist, they will drop the computer off in a paper bag.
It's unbelievable. Anyway,
oh, I'm so sorry.
I'll go through this, right? So, network access protection is basically a technology that segregates a corporate network into, the actual network, and then this demilitarization zone, sort of. So if you connect to the network remotely or otherwise, whatever it is, and your computer's not up to speed with security updates or the necessary security software, it's all sort of policy based. You'll actually be shunted off into this DMZ, and from there you can update your computer. And once it passes muster, they'll let you on the network, right? It's designed to prevent a computer that has malware on it from infecting the whole network. It makes a lot of sense.
That's a good idea.
Well, what he's saying is maybe we need to do this on the internet. Why do we let people that can't take care of their computers on the internet? They're infecting us. Think about the way that these botnet things work. I mean, these are zombie computers that were taken over because the people responsible for those computers didn't know what they were doing,
yes.
willfully or otherwise, Now, there are questions about this kind of thing because obviously it's like, well, who does this and how do we enforce that they do this and who's paying for this? And, if, Mary next door here doesn't protect her computer and we have to get it protected before she gets online, I mean, what are we going to give her to protect the computer and who's paying for that? And, where does all this stuff come from? There's a lot of questions, but it's an interesting discussion and it's an interesting thing to bring up. And I don't find this controversial. I think this is common sense stuff. I think once you hear this, you're like, yeah, sure, this makes sense. So, who knows where this goes, but this kind of falls in the category of just throwing it out there, and seeing what happens. But, again, unfortunately, he compares it to national health care. And again, the argument there being, look, you're going to pay for health care one way or the other. It's actually cheaper to do it proactively than it is to come down with all these horrible problems and try to fix them after the fact, which when you think about it is exactly the discussion you have with security, right? Same kind of discussion. But again, someone has to pay for it too. So let's face it, nobody wants to pay for it. So I think that's the problem.
Item 3.
What's that?
Item 3.
Wait, before we get to item 3.
Oh, there's more?
We shouldn't forget.
Okay.
the most important topic here at all, which is the implosion at Infinity Ward, the makers of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2.
You were mentioning this before we started, and I'm still waiting to hear what happened. So Infinity Ward makes.
So let's just step back, so people understand the history of this. Is that, and actually, this first bit, I'm off the top of my head, I may be getting this wrong, but I believe that the first major World War II shooter on the PC was actually Medal of Honor.
Yes.
And the guys who made that game left the company, whatever it was, and they formed Infinity Ward, and they made Call of Duty, right? Same team of guys. They made some improvements, whatever. That year, Activision bought Infinity Ward, right? And the next game that they did, Call of Duty 2, or the next Call of Duty game, was one of the launch titles on the the Xbox 360, and it came out on other platforms as well. It was a big deal, obviously. But what they did going forward, when you think about especially shooters, but I would imagine other games as well, there's this concept of, people create these game engines, which is what the Infinity Ward guys do. But then there are these other companies, and id had companies like this that sort of make maps or games that are based on those engines. They don't do the low-level work, but they take what had happened before and they make, games around it. So because these Infinity Ward games required deep technological innovation as well as just making the game, they realized they couldn't make one of these every year, so they brought in this other company, Treyarch, to make every other Call of Duty game, right? So Call of Duty 3 was made by Treyarch, a different company, and actually that game was okay. It was good, but it was not really
Modern Warfare 2.
No, it was not up to the same quality level. Call of Duty 4, which was the original Modern Warfare game, was made by Infinity Ward. And then last year's Call of Duty World at War, or Call of Duty 5, was made by Treyarch. And actually, that game was fantastic. But now we have Modern Warfare 2, so, every other game. And there's been some weird back and forth between those two companies. The Treyarch guys have actually made some bad comments about Infinity Ward, and vice versa. There's been some weirdness there. But so now that we have Modern Warfare 2, it's arguably the most successful shooter of all time already. They've already made $1 billion on it. It's sold, tens of millions of copies. I play this game all the time, and one of the things that's kind of interesting about it compared to last year's Call of Duty is that they still haven't released any new maps or anything for it, which I really find kind of odd. And supposedly there's some coming in the spring and then some again in the fall, but it seems to me you'd want to milk this thing for all it was worth, right? I mean, there are so many people playing this. If you released add-ons for this, people would buy them up. And I think that this has something to do with the problems that are occurring there now, because Activision announced a new Call of Duty business unit that's going to replace Infinity Ward, and they're going to be responsible for whatever Call of Duty games come down the pike. And the guy who founded Infinity Ward and some other guy were both fired from Infinity Ward this week because of, see if I can find the language here. Let's see. I can't remember. It was insubordination and breach of contract. And so I guess these like bouncer types showed up at the office and pulled him out.
The mind just wanders as to what they might have said that was
so I think in the days ahead we're going to find out more about what's going on here, but wait. I suspect it has to do with, and I suspect the reason we haven't seen any add-ons yet is because there's been this internal thing brewing. It seems like this is the type of thing that could have happened very quickly. The Treyarch guys, who I was very critical of, with Call of Duty 3, did a great job with Call of Duty World at War, and then did an incredible job supporting it with a lot of add-on maps and so forth. They did a really good job. It was really nice. And, Modern Warfare 2 is fantastic. I love it. But it's been kind of just sitting here still since it was released. There have been a lot of problems with it from a technical perspective. People have found various cheats and everything, and they've had to patch all that stuff. And, who knows, maybe that factors into it as well. But it just seems like it has... they released a very high-quality game, but then it's like nothing has happened since then. And I have to think that all this stuff going on in the back, it has something to do with that.
Yeah, or the lack thereof, or maybe they're withholding, or maybe they're not happy with their compensation. What happens when you get $1 billion in the bucket,
right?
everybody gets just a little crazy.
Well, yeah, selling yourself to Activision probably made a lot of sense in 2003.
Right.
But when you're watching your game become the best-selling game of all time, and it has win all these awards and made all this money, and you're seeing none of it, maybe it's a little harder to take. You know, at that point,
money ruins everything. It really does. It's very hard to maintain a relationship when billions of dollars get involved. Just look at me and my wife.
Exactly. So I often cite that example.
Yes. it's the Donald and Ivana of our time. Yeah. Wow. Well, that's it's weird. I mean, people the security coming and escorting them out, and the whole thing is just fascinating.
That's how this podcast is going to end. You're going to see some guys lift me in the chair, and it's actually not necessary. We just thought it would be funny.
We were talking about Demon, because the Daniel Suarez book, which you have finished, but I am in the middle of, and I'm loving.
You're in the middle, like right in the middle.
What's happening right now? Yeah, I had no big twists yet. Well, one big twist.
There's all kinds of twists.
Yeah. It's a murder mystery, but it's fascinating, and it's about a game company.
And it has a very plausible, internet worm kind of does crazy stuff. I mean, it's science fiction, and it's, out there and all that stuff. But, the background is kind of plausible, don't you think?
Totally, and because Suarez is clearly a geek, and so it's laden with jargon that you and I go,
sure.
We get it. I only imagine what the actual normal reader might be thinking. But he clearly, he gets it. It's his mother tongue. It's not. He's not making it up. Right. So it's good.
You can tell when it's not like that.
Yeah, it's really good. I'm really enjoying it, and it is a page turner. So, but it's around a game company, and the same kind of thing. They're making a lot.
Yeah.
What is the name of the game? Something Over the Rhine.
Over the Rhine is one of the games, and then I think Hell's Gate or The Gate or something.
The Gate. Yeah, and it's great. It's you could just see it's kind of a little bit of a little bit of maybe
exactly. I mean, Infinity Ward. Over the Rhine is clearly modeled after the Call of Duty stuff,
right? And, except the AI in it. I don't think this is giving anything away, but the AI in the game is so good that people are compulsive about this game.
It's too good.
It's too good. You don't even, unlike normal games where you really do want to play real people because the AIs aren't that good. You want to play the AI in this game. It's just so good.
Yep.
And that's probably all I should say.
It's good stuff.
I love it.
Yeah.
Office 2010 technology guarantee. But this is really much more interesting, I think.
I agree.
The Office 2010 technology guarantee program is on its way, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, so they haven't announced the start date yet, but I heard it could be as early as Friday this week, tomorrow as we're recording this. And the basic gist is, as with past technology guarantee programs, if you purchase, once the program starts, you can't do it right this second, but if you purchase any version of Office 2007 at retail, you'll receive a free copy of the equivalent version of Office 2010. So home and student would get home and student, so forth. One of the things that's interesting about Office 2010 that doesn't get talked about a lot is that they don't, for the first time, are not supporting the notion of upgrade versions, right? They're not going to have separate full and upgrade versions. Yeah, and the reason for that, I was told, is that some very, very tiny minority of customers ever actually went into a store and purchased an upgrade version anyway. So,
that's interesting. Everybody just bought the new one.
Yeah.
Why? Doesn't it save you money?
And I don't think most people buy it that way anyway. I think most people get it with new computers.
Yeah,
and so
that's
forth.
why. That's why.
Yeah.
That's why.
So I read this somewhere else, and it may be on ZD or somewhere, but as sort of a tip of sorts, I guess that the Office Home and Student 2007 is currently $25 or more cheaper than the 2010 version will be. So if you do intend to buy it, it makes sense, to buy 2007 first and save some money that way.
Can you get the upgrade free?
Right.
Free. But how much have they set pricing for the 2010?
Yeah, they did, and thank you for asking that, because I don't have it in front of me. But
is it roughly the same, or is it dramatically less?
Yeah, no, it is roughly the same.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's all. I mean, you don't need to give me the actual.
Yeah, so no, it's okay.
But it's not like
the internet.
It's not like $29.99.
No. So Office Home and Student's cheapest one is $149 for the box version. That comes with 3 keys, right? So you can install it on 3 different computers.
That's a nice version, but you don't get Outlook with that.
That's right. Now for $20, I'm sorry, for about $30 less, you can actually buy a product key code on a card, right? And then you go home and it installs it over the internet. The problem with that is that is not three PCs. It's one PC only. So really, yeah, I mean, that's almost like a sucker deal when you think about it.
It's such a good deal. Yeah.
Seems like you're saving some money there, but you're not. Yeah. And I guess there is a home and I believe it's home and small business or home and business version, which is new to this, which does add Outlook to the mix as well. But it's significantly more expensive. I mean, you'd almost be better off just buying.
Isn't it funny the way they've done that? Because Outlook doesn't seem like the most valuable product in that bunch, but without it, you kind of go, well, I didn't really. I need. That's what I really need. It's like they're holding it for ransom.
Yeah, and when they first did this, it was somewhat controversial. But honestly, today, I think most students are using web-based mail anyway.
Yeah. So maybe backfire on them.
I just think that not including Outlook in the home and student version is not a problem.
Yeah.
And that most students actually would probably want OneNote, not Office anyway. That said, it's probably true that many home users would prefer Outlook to OneNote, but
well, ironically, most business users get Outlook for free. If you have Exchange, you get Outlook for. I mean,
Outlook comes with everything. I used to get Windows Mobile phones. It would come with this shrink wrap copy of Outlook in the box. Very strange.
That's right. I remember that.
So that's what's weird is
they've gone from having no value at all. It was like the freebie to it being the thing that you want that you can't get in the inexpensive version of Office, which is just an odd shift.
Which proves that they sell this thing like crack,
You're right. You're right. Let us take a break here, come back with more. Paul Thurrott is here. We're talking Windows. He's got his Windows 7 feature of the week coming up in just a bit. Also, of course, the usual tips and software picks as well. But before we do that, I want to make a pick for you. If you're in the security field and you've got a responsibility for protecting your office or your workplace, or even your small business, if you're the IT person, Astaro Security Gateway. It is the UTM everybody wants and uses. UTM stands for Unified Threat Management. It is an appliance you plug in. Looks a lot like a router, except it's kind of bulletproof, heavy-gauge steel. And inside is the best in class in open source and commercial security software. Of course, an industrial strength firewall, intrusion detection, but it also has content filtering, complete VPN capabilities, and using SSL, which makes it very easy for the boss. He's going to love that, or she. You get if you have the Astaro Security Gateway and you have multiple gateways, you also get the Command Center, which lets you manage and control multiple gateways from the single dashboard. You also get anti-spam, anti-phishing. You get 3 antiviruses. This is all built into this device. 2 for the email, 1 for the web. Instant messaging, peer-to-peer control, everything. You keep your employees from playing chat roulette all day. You got to try this thing. ASG, the Astaro Security Gateway. Get a free demo in your business. Just call them 877 the number 4 ASTARO. That's 1-877 the number 4 ASTARO. If you're outside the U.S. or a non-commercial user, you can go to astaro.com, ASTARO.com, and download for non-commercial users a free version that includes what they used to charge 80 euros for, the Astaro Up to Date. So this is just a great deal for non-commercial users. There is, if you go to VMware, there's also a VMware appliance you can try. It makes it very easy to. But if you're a business, just get the demo unit. ASTARO.com or call 1-877 the number 4 Astaro, the Astaro Security Gateway. If you're at RSA right now, check them out. They're there at the. They have a great booth at RSA, and it's just a really good place to find out more about it. The Astaro Security Gateway. Paul Thurrott.
From the future.
From the future. He's suffering something we'll all have someday, Google fatigue.
Yeah, we kind of touched on this a little bit last week, but, it seems like as time goes by,
You're sick of it.
It's getting worse. It seems like it's happening, at an accelerating pace all of a sudden.
What's happening? The Google?
I'm getting tired of Google. You know, do you hear this from anybody? I mean, there've always been these people who are concerned about, like, the kind of privacy and security geeks. That always been off on the side. Yeah, I don't know about that guy. But I don't know anymore. I'm getting a little. You know what Google is?
What?
Google is Microsoft compressed, right?
The timeline's compressed.
Yes, they rode up this kind of road to, fame and fortune and all that kind of stuff, and they did it over 20 years, right? Google did it over, 5 years? Less? I don't know. It seems like all of a sudden they're just everywhere. And it seems like we can never hear about anyone doing anything without Google saying, oh, yeah, we're going to do that too. It's getting it's tiring, and by the way, I'm not to put too fine of a point on it, but I just remind people, I use Gmail, love it. I love the way it works, all that stuff. I mean, I use Google Calendar. They do whatever. But, from a financial perspective, they only have one product that makes any money, basically, right? One.
What's that?
It's advertising.
That's their business. They're
an
advertising company.
That's
everything
weird.
else is built.
It's like discovering that Microsoft makes all of their money from Panda Bear,
right?
Dolls that they sell in Asia or something.
Right.
It doesn't make it. What?
You think that they're a search company? Is that it?
What's that?
You think they're a search company, but then you find out that they're an advertising.
Yeah, and if you use all their stuff, you sort of think of them as this, online giant that has their fingers.
And that's how they started. They started doing search, and then they came up with a monetization strategy later, which turned out to be advertising.
Sure. And so that's easy. In some bizarre way. Well, no, it's easy, but it's really interesting that this money that they make from advertising, right, from something that, let's face it, nobody wants, has enabled them to just enter market after market after market. I would just look. I'll put it this way. I mean, we bring up Apple a lot on this podcast. It's hard to dismiss the influence that Apple has over the industry, despite the fact that in some markets they have very tiny market share. But here's the thing: whatever you think of Apple, at least give them this. They look at what they can do, and they target a very small set of things, and they do it really well. Typically, that's what they do.
Right.
Google is let's just throw it all up on the wall and see what sticks.
Well, what I thought was very interesting.
It's hard to respect it.
A Google executive said, "We've built." I think it's what I think it is Microsoft is a much more traditional company. They sell a product and they make money on the product. Google is a 21st century company that is a little bit hard to grok. And basically, they said, an executive said once, and I thought this helped me understand it. Mm-hmm. Use the internet. The more you use the internet, the more we make. And so their goal is to get. But
that's also scary.
It's scary. I understand.
Well, by the way, look at Microsoft. All right, so here's the beginning of Microsoft, which is actually kind of hard to remember, but the beginning of Microsoft was programming languages for PCs.
Right.
That's how they started. Basic. Not operating systems.
No,
languages. Not applications.
Yep.
Programming languages.
Right.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's prehistory, but that's what it was.
Now, and their next product was a Apple II daughter board.
They made an Apple II CPM.
So they've been a little bit all over the map, but it was always selling a product, and it was always software.
But there's a progression. I mean, you can say, they made applications, they made operating systems. One of those operating systems really took off. You can go from there to workgroup computing and networking and server computing. Even the stepping from there to cloud computing. Office productivity applications. Even video games, which are essentially software, MP3 players, essentially software, set-top boxes that sit in front of a TV, essentially software. Most of it makes sense. They jumped the shark here and there. I mean, there was a period of time in the mid-1990s where they were going to become a content company, another thing that few people remember, but there was the Mungo Park stuff and all the MSN things they were doing at the time that were crazy and insane. Remember, they did MSNBC with NBC. That was them kind of jumping the shark. Is no other way to say it. I mean, forgetting where they came from, forgetting what they do well, forgetting what their strengths are. With Google, I don't really. You have to have some trepidation anytime you use anything they make, not because you're afraid of the security or privacy implications, but because maybe they're not going to keep doing this thing. They have a handful of things that are used by lots of people, but they have thousands of things that are used by no people. So, they could come out with some little beta utility or something. You have to be a little afraid to even touch the thing, not because it's going to harm you, but what if you rely on the thing and then they stop doing it? You know, right now they're still in this kind of hypergrowth phase, obviously, but you know, at some point they're going to have to rein it in. And I don't know. You know, I don't like it when Microsoft will announce an online service just because Google did. I find that also to be problematic. But you know, Google does the same thing as well. It's only a matter of time before Google releases an MP3 player or a a set-top box for a TV, or you know, it's like they just get into every market that there is. I'm annoyed by this, and I would like to put a stop to it. It's too much. It's just too much.
Well, Paul, I've got bad news for you. I don't think they're going away.
I know. I want to go to that part of the internet where they don't have their tendrils in there anywhere. Is there a place like that?
No. I have to say, though, I think that you are not alone. And you really are maybe ahead of the curve a little bit, the canary in the mine. But I do think that increasingly there is Google fatigue, and people are getting a little, and it manifests itself with this just anxiety about it. There's a little anxiousness.
I'm not a weird, I'm not like a privacy weirdo. You know, I don't, I have a bunch of photographs up on Google Picasso Web, which makes me fairly unique, by the way. I don't think anyone uses this service. But I never once thought to myself, you know, Google's going to do something with these pictures. You know, I'm not worried about that. And I know a lot of people are worried about, you know, things like Gmail because, you know, they're running searches against your email and they're coming up with ads, and people are freaked out by that. To me, that's not. I just don't care, you know, personally. What I'm more concerned about is, you know, we talk about technology, and there's good technology and bad technology and all this kind of stuff, and you know, we debate the whole Microsoft and Apple thing. And as much as, again, with the Apple, at least I can say with Apple, you know, they typically make very good stuff, high quality products. You know, I respect it. I understand why people are fascinated by this company. In fact, we'll touch on this a little bit more later, but. You know, with Google, I don't get it anymore. You know, I feel like I don't understand. I don't see a strategy with these guys. In fact, you know, you talked about how they lucked into this advertising model, which, by the way, they took from someone else, whatever that's worth, the whole PageRank thing. I mean, it was done elsewhere before they did it, whatever. But they've turned this into some unbelievable business completely by chance. You know, if you could find some document where they said, all right, we're starting this company called Google, and here's how we're going to go, and that you will find that they actually did that thing, that would be really impressive. But that's not what happened. You know, they kind of lucked into it. And now they're just using this influence and power that they have to do everything. And who knows, maybe they'll luck into something else. And it's hard for me to respect that. You know, it's just not, this is not good technology. You know, in the same vein that we talk about what if Microsoft turns into the next IBM and they become uninteresting from a technology enthusiast standpoint. And I feel like Google is like on a hyper fast growth pace to do the same thing. I mean, they're almost going to do so much they'll become like government, you know, like protected infrastructure or something. And at that point, they're not really that interesting, are they?
You know, well, I think they're interesting, but
they are. No,
I mean, the show we do on Google is one of our most popular shows because I think partly because of this anxiety. And you know, a lot of the comments I see about Google are it's Skynet. I mean, people really are.
Yeah, and that was funny a couple of years ago.
Now it is.
But now it's like
kind of. It might be. They're listening. You know, Google. I don't have any problem with Google the way it's currently constructed because I know Larry and Sergey, and I know the quality that they represent. But the problem is, it's a corporation, and a publicly held corporation has, you know, can change and has a fiduciary responsibility to stakeholders.
I can tell. But
well, I prefer it as a cult as long as it's the cult of Sergey and Larry. But who knows if somebody comes along and says, "Hey, you know, you guys have an awful lot of information that we could use about people," and decides to sell it, it's too late. We don't have.
I'm thinking actually that the end game for these guys is going to have nothing to do with them selling anything. It's going to have to do with governments basically mandating that certain things are going to have to change because they have become essential infrastructure and are now a national security risk or whatever it is, you know, that we cannot afford for you to be a private entity or whatever. You know, that's unfortunately.
That could be
how I see that thing.
It might play out that way. Yeah. Well, that's kind of, you know, remember the government, when Microsoft got too powerful, that's what happened. The DOJ went after them. And in some ways, you know, castrated them.
More than in some ways.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and then the EU stuff was just like kicking a man when he's down. I mean,
I don't know. I, for one, welcome our new Google overlords.
And that was very wise of you to say that.
Hi, Larry.
I have a thing in my
Sergey.
notes I just wanted to sort of repeat without reading it, which is that, Google's slogan, right, do no evil, reminds me of, if you're ever at a party and someone kind of looks at you and says, man, we're having a really good time, aren't we? No, now we're not. Because if we're having a really good time, you don't have to say it. You shouldn't have to say, do no evil, really?
Yeah.
Who says that?
It's like a reminder. Guys, can you remember, please? I know you really want to.
Don't let them see your real face.
Yeah.
It's like the aliens from V that, they're really lizards.
We know you want to do evil. Can you just kind of hold off?
Yeah.
Until we actually control everything.
Right.
I think there's another end game where they become supranational. They become a government in effect, a government. I mean, you see that already with them kind of influencing U.S. public policy with regards to China.
Sure. I mean,
I have a Google Slanket.
This game in a way. I think, I don't know.
My Google Snuggie. When I wear that, I do feel all powerful. And
is it single with a slight electrical charge?
It is in a beautiful Robespierre red too, I might say. All I need is a little, miter, and I'm set. They sold out.
What's that?
They sold out. They can't get any more Slankets from Google.
Oh, I thought you meant they sold out in a different way.
You see, already we have influenced your mind, have we not?
They have sold out.
Yeah. What about Apple? I mean, Apple's going down a kind of an evil course, too, at this point.
How so?
This lawsuit against HTC.
Oh.
I really hate seeing companies litigate instead of compete. And you would think that Apple has such a dominant position with the iPhone.
Well, so there are two sides to this, as I guess there are in any court case. But I mean, two sides to Apple's rationale. One is if you have patents, and they've made a big deal of patents. I don't remember the exact quote. In fact, I meant to look this up, but you may recall when Apple announced the original iPhone, one of the things Steve Jobs said is, and we have all these patents. He talked about the patents they had. I have a feeling that a lot of those patents are going to be invalid because, let's face it, I mean, all this technology they're talking about has existed for a long time in other places, but you can't just have patents. You have to protect your patents, right? And I think they are sort of obligated to do this. So if you're going to go after someone, it makes sense to go after HTC, which is a fairly small handset maker, instead of a Google or a Microsoft, who are other huge corporate entities that are arguably infringing on these patents. Or even like a Samsung, which is a bigger company that makes handsets, than HTC. So I think this is the trial balloon, right? This is very dangerous for Apple because this will cause those patents to be challenged. And there is an excellent chance that the majority of them will be thrown away, But if they can cause any of those to stick, that is something that they can then enforce licensing on with other companies.
Right.
And that could be a significant form of revenue down the road.
Some people are saying, well, you have to enforce your patents. You do not have to enforce your patents. You have patents for a number of reasons. You have patents so others can't sue you.
Sure.
For instance. I think it might be a strategic...
There's always been there's sort of a cross-licensing notion that occurs, I think, in this industry. And Apple, as a relative newcomer, doesn't do a lot of that, And I think this is how they get into it. In other words, they have the financial wherewithal to beat HTC into the ground over time, and probably will. So this is their chance to have conversations with other companies and say, look, we don't want to do this with you. So why don't we get into some cross-licensing? Microsoft has technologies that they could license. I'm sure Google does. All the handset makers, all of the mobile operators, and so forth. This is a chance for Apple to get into the conversation, I think. In short term, what it does is it sows uncertainty, and it allows them to buy themselves some time for their next generation iPhone software or whatever. Because, effectively, you remember when the Google Nexus 1 came out, or even the Verizon Droid, you could look at these devices and say, look, this is basically the iPhone. They don't have quite as many apps on the App Store, but that's happening. I mean, as far as viable, actual, decent applications, that's going to happen. There's no way to get around that. They don't really have that multi-touch thing for some reason, right, in the core applications, the applications that came on the device. If it just had that, it would be exactly the same. And then Google kind of spastically all of a sudden added that functionality.
Turned it on. I think it was a shot at Apple.
Oh, absolutely it was. Yeah, absolutely.
So and Apple shoots back, right? This is a shooting war.
Yeah, it's a proxy war. It's almost like if
well, people say, why didn't they sue Google? But I don't know if you can sue Google. You sue the manufacturer of the handset. I don't know. Why don't you sue Google?
I think you do eventually. But again,
then we gotta fight.
Well, it depends on how this goes, right? I mean, you have to see how this goes. That's what I mean. If Apple can win on any one of these patent counts, they're in good shape. And this is something they can then turn to other companies and say, okay, now we talk. What do you have that you can offer us as a cross-licensing thing? And I think the outcome eventually, years down the road, may be just patent license cross-licensing between Apple and other companies, and then we all go on our merry way. And by the way, when that happens, this multi-touch stuff will be yesterday's news, right? Because if Apple is anything, they're very quick moving, and they are already moving on to the next thing, which whatever that may be, some sort of well, we've already seen tactile feedback screens, so it has to be something beyond that. But that's how they're going to go, right? I mean, that's how they work. So the iPhone came out 2, 3. God, was it really 3 years ago?
More.
3 years ago, something like that.
2007.
Unbelievable, innovative, crazy at the time. We're starting finally to see the rest of the industry catch up. It only took them 3 years. Now Apple's going to move on to the next big thing. So I think a lot of it's just buying time.
Yeah, because I don't think these patents, the multi-touch patent will not stand. It's not a good patent.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah. No, that's very well documented.
Yeah. Although when I look at the lists of things they're suing over, I don't see multi-touch in that list.
Multi-touch is one of them, yeah. Interesting.
There are 20 patents. I've only seen with 10 on Ars Technica, so I don't know. And some of them, are so obscure and weird and minor that they probably will win.
Well, it depends.
But that, isn't there a larger battle that you lose by what they could do is ban HTC from importing. They went to the ITC and said, can you please block all imports of HTC products? Now, who's that going to upset more? It's going to upset me and all the people who love HTC phones. Isn't there a larger game that they're going to lose by winning?
Well, but I think that's you have to look at the language he used, right? We developed technology, they stole it. We need to prevent that, to the Apple fan base, Apple is the hero here. They're doing the right thing.
Really?
Well, I would assume so. I don't know. There are different ways you can do this. Obviously you want to see them compete. I think what's happening is they just don't have that new generation technology yet, right? I have a feeling that most of what we're going to see this year from the company is going to be more of the same, like the iPad. Iterations of the same basic technology. That's not enough to fend off devices that can be sold by every manufacturer, by every by every wireless carrier, that is essentially licensed for free. They have to do something. So I think this is it.
Time for our Windows 7 feature of the week.
Yes.
Lip blocker. No, I'm sorry. BitLocker.
Check to make sure I didn't write that.
New from Carmex.
The unfortunate thing about this feature, BitLocker to go. Not BitLocker. So BitLocker debuted in Windows Vista, continues in Windows 7 with some improvements. It's basically, it started out as full disk encryption for the system partition. Now it's full disk partition for any partition. In Windows 7, they've added a feature called BitLocker to go. And this adds... not quite the same, but a slightly different full drive encryption to removable USB devices. And the sad part about it is, unfortunately, it's only available in the Enterprise and Ultimate versions of the operating system, which is too bad.
Do you like it better than the free stuff like TrueCrypt?
TrueCrypt is horrible, right? Because it's hard to use.
Right.
One of the things, in fact, I meant to publish this last night, and now I'm hoping to do it tonight if I'm lucky. I've been... there's always more stuff to add to it, but I have this series of things I've been writing about taking the mainstream version of Windows 7, which is Home Premium, looking at the features it doesn't have that are available in Pro and Ultimate, and seeing if you can replicate them with free or inexpensive tools, right? And there is actually now, and we'll talk about this, I guess, next week a little bit more, but there is a full disk encryption solution that actually makes sense. For Windows now from Zone Alarm. It's not free, but it's much easier to use than TrueCrypt. It is, however, not as easy to use as BitLocker. But it also has some additional features and is doesn't have some of the same technical requirements. So we'll get to that next week. But BitLocker to go is a way to protect USB-based removable storage devices. And the reason this is important is because businesses especially, but I would say anyone, people put all their important data on these little drives,
right? And
then they lose them, because they're so small. And in businesses, of course, what you want is something that can be driven by policy, where you can ensure that anything that gets plugged in it will work if it's a BitLocker encrypted drive and so forth. So this is a way to protect a corporate environment from.
Now, somebody in the chat room saying you can set up. You have to have Ultimate or Professional to set it up, but anybody can access it.
Any version can access it. Okay. So one of the things I would recommend to people is you can still get it right now. Microsoft is offering a free trial download of the enterprise version of Windows 7. So what you can do is install that. You can even install it in a virtual machine as long as it has USB support. You can use that to encrypt your USB drives with BitLocker.
Lock up a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, and then I did that. It's funny. I didn't do this on purpose, but the way it worked out is that most of the computers I use are actually home premium, and you kind of forget sometimes.
Yeah.
You plug in a drive or something, and
I do it all the time. It doesn't have.
Yeah, you just forget, but you forget which features are in which version. But yeah, my main desktop does have Ultimate, so I can use that to encrypt USB disks and thumb drives and all that kind of stuff. But my laptops are typically home premium. One of them is professional as well. But that gives you a chance. It gives me a chance to test different things. So that would be the little sort of a tip associated with this, is that it's not something you can create on a lower end version of Windows 7. But if you do have Enterprise or Ultimate, you can create the encryption there, and then it will work on any version. And there's some backwards compatibility stuff for Windows XP and Vista. It's read only, but it gives you a chance to access the thumb drive, from those operating systems, read the files using a special reader application. You can pull them off and so forth. You just can't write them back. But it's a cool step, and I would hope down the road they'll just open this up to more versions of Windows. But right now there is, unfortunately, that limitation in Windows 7.
Let's move on. Oh, I'm sorry.
Before we do.
Yes.
I want to say I've been meaning to do this for a while. Every week now we've been doing this
tip of the
Windows 7 tip,
feature,
right? We have a Windows 7 feature and so forth. What happens though is I think of the podcast as sort of a slice in time. We record this thing on Thursday, but of course people listen to it whenever, Monday, Tuesday, 3 weeks from now. They're on their own schedules, as they would be. And it's interesting to me. I get hundreds of email from people who are listening to these old tips of the week, and then they'll write back and they'll say, hey, you didn't mention this, or you didn't mention this, or you made a mistake. You said that you couldn't multi-select things in Windows Update if you want to remove them, but actually you can. It's just a little weird how you do it and so forth. And my response is always the same, which is, but I fixed that, But the problem is I fixed it on the site, and I think what's happening is people aren't seeing it on the site.
They're looking at a feed or something, or they're just hearing the show.
Well, they hear the show. And they think of this, to them, this is the discussion and we're done. But I just wanted to remind people, for each of these features of the week and for each of the tips of the week, I actually have an article on my website. So to find those, what you could do is you go to my podcast page, which is winsupersite.com/podcast. And then you can navigate through all the different episodes. And I will list out there all of the software I recommend, the Audible books I recommend, the tips and the feature of the week, and every one of them has a hyperlink associated with it. And if you go there, you're going to see a much broader discussion of the topic at hand. So, for example, for BitLocker to go, in this case, it's something I wrote in the past, so I've already written it because, again, we're going back and going over these features. But I have a very lengthy article about BitLocker to go on my website. So if you're listening to this and you're saying, "Oh, but Paul, you left out this important fact," whatever, chances are it's on the article. It's in the article. So I can't cover this thing as thoroughly.
Yeah, you got like a 4,000 word article here. We're not going.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of screenshots and all that kind of stuff. So I try to be very thorough on the website. So I would just ask people if they please visit my website. I don't make it just for me.
Just think of it this way: the more you use the internet, the more money Paul makes.
That's right. And actually, I do have Google ads on my site. So
there you go. You're not so fatigued to that, are you, Thurrott?
They don't make.
They don't make diddly. I know. I took them off.
Remember when Google Ads actually made money?
Yeah. I used to make $1,000 a month on Google Ads on my blog.
Sure.
And it got to be so little money that I thought it's more of an annoyance to my readers. I'm not going to run. I took them off.
Yeah.
So there you have it.
I bet Google makes $1,000 off.
Well, and that's the thing, and Google never reveals what percentage of the payments that they get that they're sharing with you, and so you just don't.
They're not evil, so don't worry about it.
It's okay. Trust us. Well, we'll take care of you. And by the way, it wasn't Robespierre I was thinking of. He was not the cardinal. It was Cardinal Richelieu.
Robespierre was the guy who got killed after the revolution in the bathtub, right?
Thing chopped off. No, that's Marat. That's another guy.
No. Isn't that Robespierre?
I think Marat got killed in the bathtub. Robespierre, I don't know. What are we debating French history for? I
didn't bring it up, but
you knew, didn't you?
Robespierre, I could have sworn was.
You knew that. You knew that when I said Robespierre that I was wrong. You didn't. It took somebody in the chat room to correct me.
Now I need to look this up.
Robespierre, I believe, was the foreign minister, wasn't he, of the French Revolution? Let's
was instrumental in the period of the revolution, which ended with his arrest and execution in 1794.
Well, everybody got their head chopped off eventually.
That's a good point.
He was the best known and most influential figure. But Richelieu was the cardinal, was Louis XIV's cardinal.
That's what I'm thinking of. Yes.
That's who I'm thinking of.
Okay.
Because he wore the red vestments.
Yes.
God, we've lost the entire audience. It's just you and me now, Paul. It's very quiet in here.
Did I tell you I went to, my last name is French-Canadian, right?
So, as is mine.
Thurrott, or whatever. So we're in Ireland a couple of summers ago, and we come to this crazy castle on the coast, right at the, well, actually it's on the east coast of, actually it's on the bottom of Northern Ireland, on the east coast of Northern Ireland. And anyway, there's a plaque, and my friend Jeff is reading, and he says, come here, you have to see this. And it turns out I've never seen a historical name, my name in any kind of history. But Thurrott, whatever, was the name of the captain of a ship who surrendered at this castle to the Irish. It was like the greatest, victory against a foreign power in the history of Ireland. And it was like the guy who surrendered was French, and his name was Thurrott. It was crazy.
Love it.
And I've never heard of this.
See?
There you go.
It's
That's my connection with French history right there.
Surrendered.
Surrender.
So here's a Audible ad. Why don't we do that right now, and then we'll get to your alrighty then, and then we'll get to your tip of the week and software of the week. Audible, of course, is a great site for people who love books but don't have the time to read. As we're all busy these days, but I bet you have time in the car during your commute, or at the gym when you're working out, or doing the dishes, or cleaning the house, or working in the garden. There's plenty of times when you could be reading, but you can't hold a book. And this is where Audible is so great. It turned my commute around. It actually made it something that I enjoyed, to get some time in the car listening to great literature, or nonfiction, or science fiction, or thrillers, or Demon, that Daniel Suarez book we're talking about. I want you to go to audible.com/windows right now and take a look. When you sign up for the gold account there, you'll get your first book free. You can cancel at any time, but that book is yours to keep forever. And Paul's made a good pick.
Yeah, this will win me some fans.
Yes. What is your pick of the week, Paul?
I read this book some time ago, and it really is good, but it's called The Second Coming of Steve Jobs. It deals with his return to Apple. So it's almost, is it even possible? It's almost 10 years out of date in a sense, right?
Yeah, because it came out in 2000.
Yeah, but it's still a very interesting time period.
Yeah.
And the thing that's coincidental about this for me is past couple of weekends, I've spent some time doing this, looking up really old Apple keynote events from Macworlds and WWDC and so forth, and watching Steve Jobs give these talks. And it's really interesting. There is no one like him on the PC side, right? I would never, and I mean never, go back and look up Bill Gates' speeches from CES or Comdex from 10, 15 years ago, ever. There's just nothing there. It's not interesting. But it is interesting to watch this guy, and he gets a lot of credit for being an incredible speaker, but it's also kind of interesting how many times he's made these really boneheaded decisions, or done some bad, just really odd things. I mean, there's some crazy Steve Jobs video out there, but he is a fascinating figure, and I think it's important, if you want to understand the modern PC industry, to understand what this guy is all about and the effect that he had, not just on Apple, but on the wider world. And it's interesting to see him kind of go along and in some cases really nail things, and in some cases really kind of miss out on things, and and then correct it, after the fact. This is a company that went after, for example, video editing, was really fascinated by this, and did a great job with it. But the truth is nobody does video editing. And while they were busy making new iMovie versions, people were busy stealing music online and making their own MP3 CDs and so forth. And Apple was nowhere to be seen. And of course, they made up for that in a big way. So
yeah, they survived.
They did okay with
they
that.
did okay with the music thing.
Yeah, they countered the Napster threat. But it's interesting to see that stuff as it happened. And this is a great book, and it covers an important period in PC history. My understanding is that Steve Jobs is working with somebody now on a biography. So maybe sometime in the future we'll have his own story from his own words, perhaps. But also, I think what a lot of people would like to see, which is a more modern history, not just of Apple, but of the PC industry. Microsoft had a bunch of stuff that came out when its antitrust stuff was huge here in the United States. But the Microsoft books like this have been few and far between since then.
Yeah, I know. It's too bad.
It was a really interesting period. A lot of interesting revelations about the company and so forth. I'd like to see more of that kind of stuff.
I would too. Second coming of Steve Jobs, Alan Deutschman's unauthorized story of Jobs and his return to Apple from Pixar. And next, and it really is a fascinating story. It really, really is. And by the way, I spent all this time looking at these videos. It's fascinating to see them demonstrating stuff on that old version of Mac OS 10 and on the initial versions of what became Mac OS. I'm sorry, the old versions of Mac OS, whatever, 8 or 9. Yeah.
And then what their plans for at the time Rhapsody and OS 10, and I think people lose perspective of things. In the context of, like, say, the Windows 7 taskbar, which I've complained about it being illogical and so forth. Microsoft very clearly was copying the dock in Mac OS 10 when they made this taskbar. They're the same thing. I mean, they're just the same. They're exactly the same. What's interesting is when you go back to the very first time that Steve Jobs showed off the dock, it looked nothing like the dock as we now know it. In fact, it was really ugly. But of course, it was based on this UI that they had in Next Step or OpenStep at the time. But it was interesting to hear him describe how, because of course, when I look at the taskbar, I think this thing doesn't make sense because you're commingling shortcuts for applications you may want to run later, as well as buttons that represent applications in Windows that are now open. Those are two different things, right? And here they are. They're all mixed up. They can be in all different orders and everything. But then you go back 10, 15 years or whatever it was, and Steve Jobs is describing the same sort of UI. And he doesn't describe it in those terms. He says, this is a place where you put things that are important to you.
Right.
And it can be anything. It can be a contact. It could be a web page shortcut. It could be a shortcut for an application that you want to run all the time. It could be anything. He did it in a very non-technical way. In other words, without thinking of the underlying, UI construct, it was like, this is just a thing, we put stuff that's important to you here. This is what you use it for. Microsoft could learn from this kind of conversation,
because even though better marketers than Microsoft, that's for sure.
That's for sure. Yeah. And it's funny because the dock at the time was so ugly, and yet it was still all there. What they were going to do, what is available now, it was there then.
Yep.
Really interesting.
Yep.
Anyway.
Get your free book. Go to audible.com/Windows. It's a great place to get audio entertainment. Moving on to our next item, which is our Windows 7 tip of the week.
Yes, this one is from Johnny Fredrickson.
Hey, Johnny. Yo.
This is a tool that's been in Windows forever, it seems, and it's easier than ever to find now. But what it basically is a management console called Computer Management that combines a bunch of utilities all into one central UI.
Every day I use that.
Yeah. Now, in older versions of Windows, and you could still do this in Windows 7, but typically the way you used to do this is you would open the Start menu, right-click Computer, and choose Manage instead of Properties. And what comes up is this, what's called an MSC console. Microsoft, I already forgot what it's called. what that stands for, MSC. I'm sorry, MMC, Microsoft Management Console. And it has a bunch of snap-ins for different utilities and so forth. Now, of course, in Windows 7, you can use Start Menu Search. And you can just type in, if you type in computer, and it's one of the first things that will come up in the list. And it basically just combines a bunch of things that are very useful utilities. Task scheduler, event viewer, shared folders, local users and groups, and so forth, all kinds of stuff. I typically go in here to find disk management, which is Windows disk partitioning tools, and also device manager. Although, again, if you just want an individual tool, it's often easier in Windows 7 now. You can run it right from Start Menu Search. You can access those things individually. In the old days, when this was kind of an up-and-coming UI type, people were going to create their own snap-ins. There was the notion that admins and companies would create custom consoles where they would combine all the tools that they would use every day for work into this central kind of UI. And I don't know. I mean, it still exists, but it's just it seems like this thing didn't really take off. And I think part of it is because, in many ways, we've moved to web-based tools.
I just love it, though. I mean, it really has.
Yeah, no, it's still very useful. And I use it all the time, too. Yeah, and but I think average users don't even know that it exists.
So you right-click on my computer and you select Manage.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep. So this one's neat because it will work in XP, it works in Vista as well.
It's all there. And I use it for disk management more than anything. That's how I.
Yeah, that's actually how I. It's funny because you can actually access that particular tool separately. But when I think of disk management, I always think computer management. And that's where I go. It's just how my mind works now because I'm using it.
But services, that's where you turn on and off services or see what services are running.
Yep.
It's got a lot of useful things. It's where
if you have IIS installed, which is the Microsoft web server, that will be in there as well.
Right.
All kinds of stuff.
Just great. So that's the Windows 7 tip. But you've also got another tip for.
Yeah, and this one actually applies to Windows 7 as well. This is really good timing. Someone named Jim Clark sent this to me. I had just pulled over a bunch of PDF files from another computer to my desktop, and I noticed that one of them, for some reason, only one, there was a preview on the icon of the document. And I thought to myself, that's odd. I thought PDF documents automatically showed icon previews in Windows 7. And I was literally just thinking about this, and this guy wrote me an email, and he said, hey, PDF thumbnails and previews are broken in 64-bit versions of Windows 7. This guy's written a fix.
Huh.
And if you go to this URL that I have here, you can download a utility that will fix this problem. It only exists on 64-bit version of Windows. So what I did was I did a Windows search for all the PDF files on my computer. I copied them into a folder, and I left that thing open on my screen. I installed this utility, and instantaneously, they all pop to life with icon previews. It's beautiful.
Wow.
So this thing works great. So if you
I didn't know it was broken.
Yeah, I don't really think about it that much. But then, like I said, when I saw that one of them, and only one of them, for some reason was showing a preview, I thought, wait a minute. They're all supposed to show previews. What's going on?
Right.
Yeah, so even if you copy a PDF file to your desktop, for example, it should appear the icon should be a mini version of that document.
Right.
And that's what will happen after you install this. So it's at it's pretentiousname.com.
Which is a good name.
Great. Until he spent some time for Europe. And he has a list of fixes for things. And the top one right now is PDF 64-bit fix. And it fixes Adobe's PDF preview handler and thumbnails on 64-bit versions.
This is kind of the new Windows 95 annoyances site, right? This is
yeah, it kind of is actually.
Yeah. Wow, that's neat.
Yeah.
Great. Very, very handy tool. Pretentiousname.com. Now, you have a software pick of the week as well. This isn't, when I see the name, I'm thinking, this isn't the game, is it?
It is the game.
This is my favorite game of all time.
I know, I just got this one. And it's funny because, so it's Turbo Risk 2.0. This is from Nathan Scarborough. It's funny because the default screen looks kind of hokey, looks kind of lousy, right? And I'm thinking, how good could this be? But actually, when you run this thing, you have a list of choices for how the game map can look. And one of them is this awesome, like Google Map kind of satellite view thing. So it goes from looking like a computer game from the 1980s to being like this futuristic Chris Crawford thing. It's really kind of cool looking. And I guess one of the big deals with this game is that
Chris Crawford. I can't believe you said that name.
The balance of power, right?
Yeah, he was the greatest game designer of the 80s.
I know.
Brilliant. I don't know I wonder what happened to him. He was kind of like the Will Wright.
He's got to be a crazy guy right now.
But simulations were his thing.
Oh yeah, no, he's genius.
Genius.
I had.
I love Risk.
I want to say such a balance of power. Is it balance of power?
Yeah, something like that. He did a bunch.
I had that on the Apple
games.
2GS.
Yes.
That.
Wow. All right, now I've got to Google Chris Crawford.
Maybe I had it on the Amiga.
It took me a while. You said the name, and I went Chris Crawford.
Yeah. Anyway, this is cool. It's free. It is Risk.
I spent so much time playing Risk in college. I think that's probably what happened.
Yeah.
Chris organized the Game Developers Conference, GDC, which is coming up.
Chris Crawford did.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. He did Wizard for the Atari console. Energy Czar.
Gary, talk to that guy Gary about
Eastern Front, 1941. Remember that?
No.
Oh, that was a great game. Wow, this is really, really cool. Go read up on Chris Crawford in Wikipedia. One of the greats, and let me see what it says he's doing now. Doesn't say. He's been working on Storytron, an engine for running electronic story worlds, and a beta of the Storytronics authoring tool came out December 2008.
He's still kicking around.
He's still writing stuff, and he launched the system in March 2009 with a story world sequel to Balance of Power.
What sequel?
Well, this is this Storytron thing, this story world, but I don't know if it ever went anywhere. Huh. Balance of Power. Wow.
That was a great game. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
And if you did it wrong, it would end in a global thermonuclear war. I distinctly remember that.
Well, who could forget?
That was not what you wanted.
I think that would be wrong.
Not the preferred outcome.
Turbo Risk does not end global thermonuclear war. It just ends in somebody kicking your butt.
I'll tell you the times I've been playing around with it, it ends with the AI kicking my butt. That's exactly how it ends. I just lose whatever lands I've set aside. I lose them.
I gotta try this. That is so fun. Now this would be a great iPad game.
Yeah,
that's what I want it for. But right now for Windows, and you have another software pick, you little dog.
Yeah, actually, I thought I was saving this one.
You're gonna save it.
Okay.
Save it.
Okay.
Boom. I'll delete it from our show notes right now. No one will know it existed ever.
Okay.
Paul Thurrott is the editor-in-chief of Windows. Yes, you gotta learn. You can stretch this stuff out. It's like
I have so much though. I have so much to give.
It's true.
Leo.
You do. He has so much to give, folks, and he just gave it to you. He just dumped it right all in your head right now. On episode 146 of Windows Weekly. Paul, you want more from Paul? You can get more from Paul. Go to his great site. As he mentioned, everything really is there in great detail. This just skims the surface. It's the super site for Windows at winsupersite.com, newly redesigned to appeal to the eye, the ear, and the nose, I guess. It smells...
It is a scratch and sniff certified site.
It smells like daffodils, which have no scent at all. It is the super site for Windows, winsupersite.com. And, of course, Paul's the news editor of Windows IT Pro. His book, Windows 7 Secrets, is in stores everywhere. Are you going to Mix? You're going to Mix.
I am.
And you're going to you go to all the shows. So somebody
so next week I'm going to be in Seattle, but you're going to be at the South by Southwest.
South by. So we'll record the show early next week on Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. Will you be in Seattle when you're doing that?
Yeah, I have to... Yeah.
Can you find somewhere to do it from?
I have some meetings. Oh, yeah. Good. I stay with friends.
It actually might be better because you can report on what you've learned in the belly of the beast.
We'll see.
Or not.
I'll let you know.
Thanks, Paul. We'll see you next time on Windows Weekly.